Welcome back. Today is June 26th. We are back in the organic cornfield cultivating this evening, and just wanted to show you guys a few things about what we got going on. First off, I don't think if I could be cultivating with a rear mount cultivator without that guy. That is a cultivation mirror, and it shines back between the inner row and the rear tire, and it really helps you to see exactly where your cultivator is sitting behind you and where you are driving without having to turn around. If you turn around, you wipe out corn, is basically what it comes down to. Cultivation mirror, I'll zoom in on it here in a little bit. They actually are still making them and are very helpful in running a cultivator, especially if a guy doesn't have much experience. The other thing I wanted to show is I'm using an open station tractor. I've found that me personally, I do a much better job when I'm cultivating out in the open air, without AC, without a radio going. Just you can see 100 times better and less distracted, and you can really pay attention to what the cultivator is doing. So we'll jump off here and I'll kind of show you what we're doing this evening. I am running a Buffalo 4600 cultivator. It is set up with 2 cutaway discs which pull away from the row, and 1 big single sweep, which in our case we are on 36-inch rows. We are running a 24-inch wide sweep on the back. In a more typical 30-inch row scenario, the first cultivation pass you'd probably be running like an 18-inch sweep. I have the front disc killers set about 9.5 inches apart, which is about, you could maybe set them a little bit tighter, but you got to be careful not to prune roots, and realistically that 9 to 9.5 inches is about as good as a guy can drive. The one thing about those disc killers is that they, just by the nature of them, when they grab something, they pull it away. They grab it. There is no forgiveness whatsoever, which is good if you're a weed, or bad if you're a weed, I guess you could say, because any little weed that's kind of growing right in this area, right in front of him, where if you're coming with the edge of a sweep, the sweep would maybe shove him over and he would survive, but that disc killer pulling in will hook basically anything, weeds or corn or crop, and it will tear it out. There is no coming back from that. So when you do get off the row with a cultivator like this with the disc killers, it totally wipes it out. We've got decent weed control in this field. I guess it's not terribly bad, but it is getting kind of hairy. Still some wheat which survived through the field cultivation and rotary hoe pass. We've got some little foxtail and some pigweeds and lamb's quarters coming here. For the most part, the row is fairly clean. That is the goal of planting into a dry forecast, is this corn has a big jump on these weeds. And even this little pigweed here, he will be able to get buried by the cultivator when we go past him. And you can see down the row, it is fairly there. We do have some weeds coming here. Lots of itty bitty foxtails coming, and some little button weeds, and lots of little, as I zoom in here, little broadweeds coming along. But this corn has a big jump on it, and when we can get this big a disparity between the crop and the weeds, we will have pretty good success. We're running about 4 to 5 mile an hour probably with this pass. The downside to a Buffalo single sweep cultivator like this is that without a shank close to the row, the only control you have over throwing dirt into the row is basically speed, and it sometimes can be hard to get a good flow of soil in around the corn plant without knocking it over when the shank, in our case, is about 18 inches away from the row. But with a little bit of patience and experience, you can get them set to do a pretty darn good job like what we're doing here. As you can see, we've got a lot of soil thrown in around these rows. We're getting these weeds in the middle cut out very well, and overall just doing an excellent job of burying those small weeds, and we will have good weed control in this field. We'll probably come back over this probably in a week to 10 days. This corn should really explode. We've got good moisture now, and they're talking 90-degree temperatures for the next week, so this corn should just explode now after getting it a little bit of air into the soil with the cultivator. And these warm temperatures, this corn really should explode, and we can come back again hopefully and throw a little bit more soil up around the row and finish burying a few of these smaller weeds that we did not totally get buried. But even this guy here, you can see he's kind of gotten a clod knocked on him, a little bit of dirt thrown on him. That will be enough to slow him down a little bit and buy us a little bit of time, that when we do come back this next time, we can finish burying him the rest of the way. And you can kind of see we've got some of that along here. But for the most part, we're actually getting almost everything buried with this first pass, which I'm very happy about. The buffalo is kind of a crude machine. First off, if you're ever going to run one of these, the first thing I would buy would be a cultivation mirror, like I talked about. The second thing would be a cordless impact wrench. Not too terribly hard to adjust, but you can adjust basically anything. With these two bolts and this clamp here, you can slide that disc killer closer to the row or farther apart from the row, depending on the stage of the crop. The 4 bolts in the front there, you can adjust the height of that, how deep that coulter or that cutaway disc is running. You have a similar setup here with 4 bolts and the shank with the big sweep to adjust the depth of that. You've also got an adjustment down here for the pitch of the sweep. And this soil with the wheat cover crop we had last year and soybeans last year as well, this soil is very, very mellow and soft, and we're running that sweep as flat as it as possibly will go. Trying to just run it very, very shallow to prevent slabbing and cut the full width of that big wide 24-inch sweep. As you pitch that sweep down farther, it doesn't take much of it all, and in our clay soils you can run into a case where it gets down into the hard pack stuff and will start slabbing. And also the steeper angle that it runs, the less width that you're going to cut. So if you dig down here, you can see that even clear out here on the edge of that sweep, which is right here is the edge of my sweep. The edge of that sweep there is running still even a good about 2 inches deep or so. So we're running that sweep fairly shallow and really flat, and just trying to cut that whole width and throw this soil, moves the soil back in against the row. And I'll show you here if you can see another reason I really, really like cutaway discs. I mentioned that they will grab any weed in this area here right next to the row and throw it in and completely rip it out. But also, just due to the curvature of the disc, as they get deeper, they get farther away from the row per se, if you follow me. Due to the curvature of the disc, you stay out of the roots a little bit better because it is running really shallow up to the front here where it's right next to the corn, and as it gets back to the back here, just by the curvature of the disc, it gradually gets deeper and deeper. And as your corn roots come down, they're angling down. So hopefully this curvature of this disc will help you stay a little bit farther away from the corn roots and do less damage that way, versus if you had a full sweep coming clear out here 2 inches deep, you would be cutting roots kind of right along the base of the plant, which is not ideal. Sometimes you have to do it to get weeds, but ideally you don't. But I'm a big fan of cutaway discs. The other thing a cutaway disc will do is it will loosen this soil up here first before the sweep gets to it, and then the sweep has already loosened soil to throw back in around the row. Versus if you didn't have the cutaway disc, that soil could be kind of hard, and when the sweep hits it, it doesn't flow near as nicely as if the dirt following that cutaway disc that has already been tilled once per se, and then loosened, and is a lot easier to throw back. When you're setting up really any cultivator, or especially a buffalo like this, first thing first is kind of the starting point is to get the parallel linkages and the main frame of the cultivator level with the ground, and then start making your adjustments from there. You could spend countless hours tweaking and adjusting, but if you don't have the base level to begin with, you're going to end up fighting yourself more than necessary. Start with everything level and then kind of go to your other adjustments for there. The other thing that a guy can kind of cheat with a little bit is the top link of your tractor. For most cultivators, the longer the top link, or you can rock the frame backwards to make them go deeper. And that's the case with this buffalo as well. And it doesn't take very much at all. Even a half a turn sometimes can make a huge difference between going deeper or shallower, and whether if you get too deep, you can get into the start slabbing things, or too shallow, not cutting the full width. I mentioned the mirror before. I really like these mirrors. Let me zoom in here. Klinger Manufacturing in New Ulm, Minnesota. They are still made today, last I knew. Just a very simple mirror, bolts on the side of your frame of your cultivator. Gives you a good look back. And if I can get in here, especially if you run disc killers like this, you can look back and see that row right between those disc killers and know exactly where your cultivator is running. And if you get off, you can instantly see it before you take out a quarter mile of crop, or you're not constantly looking back over your shoulder trying to worry about what's going on. The last thing that we are running on this cultivator today is an old Buffalo Scout guidance system. It has 2 hydraulic cylinders on each bottom of the 3-point length that rock back and forth. There's 2 little whiskers feelers that run down here and drag along the row of the corn. And most of our ground other than this field is rolling, steeper kind of contours with some curves and side hills, and that guidance system really helps steer the cultivator and gives you a little bit of flexibility if you're not driving perfectly over the row. They haven't made them for quite a while. There's lots of them around. They're very cheap, but they do get worn. I believe Schaefer Manufacturing in Nebraska is rebuilding them, but not necessarily a have to, but if you're in hills and contours and falling ground, relatively cheap investment to kind of give yourself a little bit of forgiveness or flexibility. They can be kind of frustrating when they don't run perfectly true or centered. It's kind of can be a bigger headache than they're worth sometimes, but when you get a good one and get it set right and kind of get yourself familiar with them, they really work nice. So anyway, that's what we got going on today. Very happy again with what we're doing, being able to roll the loose soil back in around the row. And again, the kind of the whole key to this field's what I feel will be success is the dry window after planting. That when you can get that corn up 6-8 inches like we are here above the small weeds, you can really have a good start and are able to move a lot of soil around that base of the plant and bury the small weeds, where if a guy plants right into a rainy forecast, these weeds would be just as tall as the corn instead of 6 inches smaller. So kind of and it takes a lot of luck, and this year was especially frustrating because it was into June when we planted it, but I would take a late planted clean crop any day over an early planted weedy field. And my experience has been I've seen weeds do way more damage than late planted crops. So it's hard to be patient, but a guy really kind of, the key to weed control is planting into a dry forecast. So that's what we're going on today.